Like when I was younger, I wanted to be the world's best. The best leaders are not the loudest, they're the clearest. I want to get messy. I want to build it. I want to know that my intention, my effort, and my life force, to use your word, went into sculpting what is in front of me.
Devotion, I think, is a prerequisite for mastery.
You are not there. You've morphed into the practice. The practice is moving through you.
The continual chipping away of what doesn't serve, what is not needed here, so that the truest form of this practice or this music or what can flow through without resistance or without anything in the way.
Mastery, we need it now more than ever. And again, it doesn't mean that if you play a masterful game that you're gonna be recognized or you're gonna, that's not the point. It's more so constant progression towards something you really deeply care about.
And can I be so willing to just surrender to it? God is essentially like, create something so beautiful. Hey, Coachable family. Welcome back to the Coachable Podcast. It's Tori, and I am back in the studio with a dear brother and friend. James Silvas is here, returning for the second time, I think, now on the Coachable Podcast. We've tried to do this a few times, but it's always a pleasure to have you here and to share space with you. If you have not heard of James before, he is an incredible master coach and works in the fields of sports psychology and personal mastery, men's work, and just blends mindset and impact and deep heart-led leadership and connection in a way that is so brilliant that I love being in his field and in his energy and getting the codes that he embodies and walks in and teaches, because I always leave better. I always leave more inspired, and he's always working on something incredible to make a bigger impact in this world and in this city. And so I'm excited just to drop in a little bit deeper today and see what's going on in your world, because there's nothing I love more than being in rooms with people that call me forward and that invite me into new levels of expansion and curiosity and deepen my, my love for learning. And I know we share that in common. Yes. And so, I just want to say thank you for being the man that you are, the leader that you are. And I'm excited to hear kind of what's alive for you in this season of your life.
Yeah.
So welcome back.
Thank you for your work and for being in my life as well.
Life throws a lot at us. Struggles with relationships, business stress, family issues, and past traumas that keep resurfacing. I've been there, trust me. And I thought I could handle it all on my own. But then I found a solution that changed everything. And that was working with a virtual online psychiatric provider. Through expert support, I learned to process old wounds, reset limiting patterns, and break through mental blocks that were holding me back. I even explored ketamine therapy, and the transformation has been so profound. I had to share it with you guys because it's changed my life, both in my relationships and just how I show up in business. That's why I'm so passionate about Anywhere Clinic. They offer holistic, accessible mental health care, from therapy and medication management to cutting-edge treatments like psychedelic-assisted therapies. You don't have to wait for a crisis to seek support, because thriving is possible right now. So go to anywhereclinic.com and book a session for as low as $120, or you can check to see if your insurance covers it. So take that step towards the support you deserve today.
Yeah. So what's new? Like, just give me a little update. If people haven't listened to our past conversations, just give a little bit of brief background on, the work that you do, but like what's really alive for you in this season of your work and just your personal work on yourself.
What I try to do is find strategies and frameworks that help provide clarity for people so they can move through noise. Everything around us, it can be potentially distracting. And until you lock in on something that's meaningful, important, deep, rich, you can get lost, and there are a lot of people who are not clear and who have lost sight of maybe who they were or are not clear on where they want to go. And so they live in this limbo. And I like to provide spaces and opportunities and questions and exercises to probe that and for them to find conviction in who they are. Because the better that is, the more authentic they can be, the more true that they are, the more genius they get to bring to the spaces and to the relationships. And so I think what's alive for me right now is lots. My wife is going back to school for her marriage and family therapy license. So that's been really cool, navigating her stepping back into a space where she gets to do what she wants as opposed to just being a mom. Nothing wrong with that, but adding another element to what she has been doing so well for the last 5 years as our kids have been growing. Aiden in Oakley, almost 5 in July, and then 2.5 Oakley. Just the lessons that come alive every day of me being impatient and overbearing and the beautiful mirrors that they are for me. And then in my work, finding ways to be even more precise and focused and travel less, but still have the same impact. Because I'm in, 30 plus cities a year, 3+ countries. And so that's also time away from family, right?
Sure.
So finding the harmony in that and continuing to create resources that support people on their journeys.
Yeah. That you really support people, like you were saying, in cutting through the noise to get back to this essence of who they are, so that they can also make an impact. And I know it's got to be so resonant for a lot of people that are listening, is what you referenced at the very beginning of just like a lot of people feel lost. A lot of people are, even if they think they've found their purpose or have had insights around, something that's meaningful to them and what they want to pursue, it's easy to get distracted and derailed and then just like lost in the analysis paralysis or decision-making process of like, what do I give my life force energy, like my energy to,
Right.
Let's start there. Just like you were even just saying, having to make decisions about, where do I put my life force? Where do I give my energy? Where do I give my time? Do I do it in 30 cities this year? Or do I, create something that can make a meaningful impact and spend time with my family in a way that feels really nourishing, And that is a decision that those are decisions every leader has to make about every human has to make about what am I going to give myself to?
Yeah.
What am I going to put forth effort in what arena matters to me?
Yes.
Whether that's I'm thinking about starting a business or I'm in a 9-to-5 or I want to work on this creative side thing. What have you found has really been supportive in your journey and subsequently in the lives of your clients that's helped cut through the noise and the confusion when you've got a lot of options on the table?
Yeah. So a few things come up there. One is this move from, like, when I was younger, I wanted to be the world's best.
World's best anything?
The world's best at first when I was super young, I was like athlete. I'd be the world's best quarterback or the world's best actor or the world's best coach. Lots of ego there.
I want to be known.
Yeah. I want to be recognized. I want to be seen. I want to know that I'm making a difference. And then in my mid to late 20s, it was world's best to my best. And that shift right there went away from status and more towards truth. And as I've matured into my 30s and, soon to be 40s, that helps me know what to say yes and what to say no to. But that requires a lot of asking of really hard questions and a lot of time to put things together and some patience that you're not going to get it right off the bat. So there's a level of compassion that one has to have for themselves as they do that clarifying internal work, because I think the best leaders are not the loudest, they're the clearest. And if we could be clear in our own wants, desires, dreams, goals, not only are we going to be able to articulate that better to ourselves, but to everyone else that we interact with, whether we're building a business, we're building a marriage, or we're building a friendship. Here's who I am. Here's what I need. Here's what I can give. And here's how I tend to operate, and I'm open to X, Y, and Z. Someone who approaches life like that comes at it which much more of a collaborative mindset, as opposed to you need to give me something or it needs to be this way. So there's a level of surrender baked into that. And then the second thing is like saying yes and no. I think is as basic as that sounds. saying yes is so important initially, because if you don't say yes, you're not gonna know what's possible. But then you're gonna reach a point where you know what you want, and that's where no becomes really important.
Yep.
Right. And so it's like, what season of life are you in? Are you in the earlier side of like where yes is more of what it should be?
Exploratory.
Right. But then at some point you got to click into something that you find rich meaning in. And that's where I think mastery comes into play. It's like, I don't want to be someone who searches for hits of dopamine. I don't want the quick fixes. I don't want something that comes completely curated. I want to get messy. I want to build it. I want to know that my intention, my effort, and my life force, to use your word, went into sculpting what is in front of me. And that is so rare nowadays because we're valuing things that are more superficial than deep. And deep is scary. Deep is vulnerable. Deep is hard to reveal for many reasons, but in the crafting of that, that's something that no one can ever take away. So if you truly want to be indestructible or unshakable, that's where you want to put a lot of your focus, and then match your relationships, your opportunities, wherever you spend time, to those things. And so that's what I personally try to do as often as possible, daily.
Yeah. The no piece is so relevant for me in this stage of my life, because like you were mentioning, there's a season of exploration of figuring what do I like? What do I not like?
Right.
What turns me on and gets me excited? What gets me energized? And what is like just it doesn't do anything for me.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like, And then you kind of get a sense of that. And now how do I continue to curate a life of more of what I want and I desire, and fills my cup and inspires me? And, over the weekend, my partner and I went to EDC one night. He had never been, and he used to be in rave culture and stuff in the music industry years ago. And we went and we had a night, and at the end of it, we're like, you know what? This isn't for us anymore. Like, we had a good time being together, but it was like when we really tune in to what is a yes and what is a no, we're like, we feel complete with this experience. And what's really calling is deeper connections that nourish us in different ways.
Yes.
And so in the saying yes to something, it gave us clarity about what is a no for us, actually. And there's richness, and there's learning in that, right? Yeah. And also we got to have a great experience. But I think for the expansion into masterful level impact and influence and leadership and just skill development requires such boundaried life and living around what is worth me investing the most precious thing I have, which is my time and my energy. So what is currently a full yes for you? I'm curious. Like, when you think about the life you're building and your vision for your life, what are the things that are like?
I think about the services and the experiences that I personally want to experience, whether it's me being a facilitator or a coach, or it's me being a receiver. And the few components that I've narrowed it down to is the individual that I'm interacting with has to be growth minded, 100%, like base. They have to be rooted in the heart to a degree that they're aware that maybe they don't know much. That's fine, but the awareness is there, or they're aware of how they're feeling, what they're wanting, some understanding of that, and they're wanting to create impact through service, philanthropy, their own skill set leveraged the right way, not in an egoic sense of like I want to be recognized, but more so, I see a problem that I genuinely feel called to help solve. Those three are important. Challenging mental and physical and emotional experiences as well. Different things. Not more of the same, just higher intensity, completely different things. As an example, I lead an all men's immersive experience in Costa Rica. And one of the things that we did was a primal day to help men reconnect back to ancient, traditional kind of things. And so we built a shelter, we built a fire, we filtered water, and we simulated hunting through building of tools. And we didn't kill animals or anything. We used a watermelon as a target. But what that taught me was, one, I never did Boy Scouts or anything. So that was the first time that I was immersed in nature, and the respect level for nature as a whole by doing that dramatically increased. The bonds that were formed from that level of simplicity, insane. And the confidence that gave me, that if at the worst thing was going to happen and I was stranded, I know how to take care of myself. Integrating that back into a convenient, everything's provided for you lifestyle, it provides context and perspective that I think is important, because you'll have more gratitude, but also you're able to navigate comfort better through exposing yourself to something you haven't done. So that's an example of like something new, something challenging that, if integrated right, can boost the quality of life for everyone, for a family, for you and your brothers, or, just maybe it's just yourself. So newness, and different countries, like travel, immersion into different cultures.
Yeah.
I think nothing touches the lessons that can be learned through travel. Nothing. And so for me, the more experiences that I can craft around the country, particularly around the world, that really at the moment excites me more than anything else.
Yeah.
Is how do I take the tools that I've learned in the corporate side, in the sports side, in the human side, and now apply it to places I've never been, where I don't speak the native language, and maybe they don't even speak English. What holds true? What is battle tested? What holds the pressure test that is universally helpful
Across cultures.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so that has most of my attention.
I love that. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
This year, as we're looking at the rest of the year and thinking about, this is the first year of that I can think of in many years past, where I've sat down at the beginning of the year and really said, like, I'm going to craft out my best year possible. And like, what does that look like? And what are the experiences I want to have? And how do we now, versus like, oh, I just hope life turns into this amazing experience. It was like how I intentionally create it and schedule it in, whether from the macro to the micro, like on a big scale, to also like daily habits and rituals. Like, I'm going to create the life I want to experience and seek out the experiences I want to have.
Right.
And a big piece of that is travel. And of like, where are the places that feel resonant to my soul at this part of my journey, that feel like they have codes for me to learn and implement in my life? Is there a place at all that you're feeling specifically 100%. Called to right now?
Yes. And before I share that, I also want to preface that I'm not saying that having kids and being in a marriage and starting a business aren't also powerful, but travel is so different and out of the norm for most people that it's jolting, and there's a lot of lessons there. So that's what I meant by that. In the container that I've created, the goal is to do 7 continents in 7 years.
For Forge.
Yeah. Antarctica is included in that. So that'll be cool. But Asian culture is calling.
Same.
Japan, Bali, Thailand, these places, for simplicity, for precision, for legacy, for just generational respect, whether it's forced or not. Like, the lineage that speaks through the individual in those parts of the world is something that I don't think America does or can touch, because we're newer.
The ancient, the history.
Like, usually the trends start Eastern, they move move West, and so to be in that side of the world, someplace I have not been yet, which I'm going to Bali for the first time in June. So that'll be my first introduction to that side of the world. But that's that side. Yeah, definitely calls me.
I'm feeling called to Bali, to India specifically too. Maybe even Egypt a little. But to be able to sit, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, one of the biggest full yes for me is being surrounded by people where I can be the student and I can receive and I can be a sponge and learn, and to like, it excites me to think about going to that part of the world and going to the temples and sitting in the ashrams and going to sitting in the spaces with the gurus and just like witnessing the life that they choose to live and tuning into why that is the call that they've decided to devote their life to. You know what I mean? Because devotion, I think, is a prerequisite for mastery. I'm curious, and so I want to be around people who are deeply devoted
100%.
In their calling and in their purpose. And obviously that's something I see in you. Because what we're talking about here in terms of mastery, and I want you to give your own kind of definition for that, is mastery is a different type of game.
It's completely different.
So lay that groundwork for people.
I think there's two games that people mostly play. There's status games and then there's the mastery game. Status game is all about what is perceived outward, in that how much money you have, kind of car you drive, how big is your house, you know, how attractive is your spouse or whatever. Like these types of things people will do consciously or unconsciously to gain status within a community. Could be the family, could be the city, could be social media, wherever. But status games are short-lived and you never win because someone always has more, someone's always better. Mastery is a never-ending game where the point is to play. Similar to infinite games and finite games, right? There's a lot of similar there characteristics, but it's a never-ending process where input is the most important. Who's showing up, how much energy is being put into the task for the purpose of mastering the task. And by mastering doesn't mean that you arrive.
Perfecting.
Yes, it's just constant refinement, never-ending growth. And you just learn to fall in love with the infinity of the task. And when that happens, you have to detach the ego, because the ego wants finite. The ego wants this is this and that is that. It's for separation so that safety can now be had. I know what I'm playing. Mastery is like when you're doing it at the highest level, there is no you. You are not there. You've morphed into the practice. The practice is moving through you. And so if you think about a pianist or a basketball player, I use two of those analogies. Like the pianist is so in the music is coming out of the person.
They just become the channel
exactly.
for the delivery of that expression.
And the person listening then transcends their own experience through the transcendence of the person who is channeling it, right? Same with basketball, like a Kobe Bryant, masterful at the game because of his commitment, because of, you know, all the years of prep. You're watching Kobe do the move, but as much as you're watching quote unquote Kobe, you're watching the move be expressed in a way that it had never been expressed. And so there's a deeper level of appreciation for the components of basketball as much as there is for Kobe playing the game. And so I love that. And I think in order to be a master or on the path of mastery, you have to be able to understand simplicity and complexity and how both of those are intertwined. Because in order to get simple, you have to wrestle through complex. And by knowing that something is simple, the doorway to simplicity opens you up to the complexity. So you got to be able to hold both and still distill what it is important, what's the essence of something, to the point to articulate it so that it can be further understood from your point of view and from the other person's point of view. So there's a drive for simplicity, I think, embedded into mastery. And then there's a service component to mastery, I think, a reverence. There's like, I love the game of basketball so much, or I love music so much that I'm giving all of me to it to better it or to understand it more. So you approach whatever it is with more reverence and respect, and you come correct. You don't come sloppy. You don't come like out of character. It's just like
the honor.
Yeah. There's so much like divinity.
Well, that was going to be my question here is like, so what I'm hearing you say is there's the performance game and the status game.
Correct.
And then there's this other which is the temporary ones and zeros and ones, like of if I do this, then I'll be this, or if when I get this, then I'll be somebody. Versus infinite levels, there's no end.
No.
And I'm committed and devoted to the becoming, like to the continual refinement of what it gives me the picture of is like I can't remember what picture it is. I can't remember what art piece it is, but it might be like Michelangelo or something, where it started with like just the marble slab, and then he like chips away all of the excess marble to then reveal this beautiful masterpiece, right? And it's like what comes forward for me in that is the mastery is the continual chipping away of what doesn't serve, what is not needed here, so that the truest form of this practice or this music or what can flow through without resistance or without anything in the way, right? And when I heard you initially talk about the status game, to me, that feels like the externalization of power, right? Versus this side where the power is sourced from an internal place. Where when I have status, I will be powerful, I will be significant, I will matter. And the shift to mastery is understanding I am. Power comes from within me, not versus something that is out external.
Yes.
When I accumulate or I arrive somewhere.
Yes.
It is just something that I allow to move through me because it exists within me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So the question is, in order to play the mastery game, is there a spiritual component? Because you said it's almost divine. So is there a requirement for a connection to a higher power of some sort, in your opinion? I
do think yes. Yes. I think it is, as long as it's framed as something bigger than you.
You're right.
Because if it weren't, it wouldn't be never ending. If it wasn't bigger than you, then what's the space to grow? If it's only self-serving, you're going to stop at some point where you've gotten what it is that you think you need. If it's always something bigger than you, then there's always room for expansion. And as you expand and realize the impact that your work or you have on wherever you go, that fuels the evolution that you can't yet see until you get to that point. You know, so that in there lies the never-ending journey of it. And the internal compass that happens in the mastery game is something that can't be bought. It can't be sold. It can't be inherited. It can only be crafted individually through the person. And so that's why going from world's best to your best sheds the societal pressures and expectations to create more space for what is genuinely coming through for you. What do you want to want? Not what do you want, you know? Because most people will be like, well, my mom said I should, so that I want that. My wife or husband says I should do this, so I want that. No, what do you want to want? If it was truly from you, what is that? And when you can get clarity there, the game really gets fun.
Yeah, when you start to deshackle yourself from all of the conditioning that says this is what you're supposed to do or who you're supposed to be or what you're supposed to want or what life is supposed to look like versus what is true for me. And starting to decipher the difference between what is important versus what I've been told is important.
Yes.
You know,
right.
And giving yourself the permission to be honest about that.
Yes.
First.
Yes.
And what would I want to do or what would I want to create if there was no, like, if all my needs were taken care of and provided for, what would want to come through me? Would I want to paint? Would I want to make art? Would I want to play music? Would I want to use my hands and craft a bow and arrow? Like, I don't know. Or would I want to build a business? You know what I mean? And because I feel like it's like the closer we can get to the essence of who we are versus the ego, right? Which is the beginning of this conversation, of the noise that you help people get through, is all of all the stories that people have around what you're supposed to do and what your life is supposed to look like.
Right.
Or even people that I know who go into lines of service because that's the right thing to do. Or for me, there was a point where it's like, oh, that's good. That's like the good girl thing to do versus, no, I'm showing up in a place of service because this is my natural, like, it's what naturally who I am. And that is a different place to like show up and live from.
Yes. Performance or status is outcome defines me, right? Mastery is actions define me, which is what I have ultimate control over, is what I do, how I show up, how am I interpreting this, like the controllables. And mastery, we need it now more than ever. And again, it doesn't mean that if you play a masterful game that you're gonna be recognized or you're gonna. That's not the point. It's more so constant progression towards something you really deeply care about, and that mastery can be brought into your marriage. How do we have a masterful marriage? You know, and what I have found is that the people who seek mastery also seek truth. And so if you put a status person in the room with a masterful person, it's gonna be a very interesting conversation. But the masterful person will want direct, honest feedback. And from not everybody, but from very specific sources. They want to know, where are their blind spots? Where am I not showing up the way maybe I can't see it, but what am I capable of? I like that idea. How can I cross-pollinate this industry that has nothing to do with what I'm currently doing and infuse that into what I am doing? Oh, that's really good. I didn't think about that. Like because it's not about them. It's the craft.
Right.
The craft is wanting me to help it become better. Okay, cool. So when I receive feedback, I'm not taking it personally. I'm using it as information to further deepen and inform the next decision or the next action. So I think that's also another key characteristic of someone who plays the mastery game.
It also sounds to me, and in my experience, it's a devotional path, like to something greater that says this thing is what inspires me to get up and to live. And you can tell when someone is not living an inspired life. And the times in my life when I wasn't being, pulled or motivated or driven by something bigger than myself, when I was living in like sourcing my worthiness and my value from my ego and my performance, I'm disconnected from all of that.
Yeah.
And it's a push. The energy for me is when I'm in ego and when I'm in that performance, it's like a push to create versus being pulled by something that wants to exist in the world,
right,
and has chosen you as its beautiful, like, vessel, parent, whatever, to birth it and to bring it forward. And for me, it's like, that's such a gift when I've tuned into something creative in the field that wants to now has selected me to bring it forward. And that is something I get to steward, something I get to nurture, something I get to water. And that's a choice, because we have a million things that are asking for our attention and are we going to feed and water something that doesn't serve us, or are we going to actually nourish the thing that maybe doesn't make a ton of logical sense, or we don't know yet the full picture of how it's going to play out, but it feels like it's compelling us. Like for me internally, how I kind of identify these things is like, I feel compelled to talk to this person or have this meeting or write this piece of poetry, or it's like, it wants to exist in the world. It wants to come through. And can I be so willing to just surrender to it? Can I be willing to step out of the way and let go of my agenda for what it's supposed to look like and let it come through in its most natural state. And like you were saying about Kobe, I think when we watch people who are at that level of mastery, there is a moving over of the ego. Like they step aside almost so something else can move through them. It's like that flow state. You can call it a million different, we can define it in a lot of different ways, spiritually or scientifically, but you watch it in, high level military when they're all in sync and they're just flowing together in such a precision and intentional way. Like it's almost for me when I get into this space, like I'm a bystander to the thing that's happening. I don't know if you've ever experienced 100%.
That. You get like meta and you're like watching yourself do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting is I want to be clear that like the status game can get you things. Like obviously you can still have big business and, a relationship, but it's not sustainable and it's definitely not as deep. And to your Kobe example, like Kobe even had an alter ego created for how he showed up to basketball, which is the Mamba mentality. Like, I think there's beauty in knowing the type of mindset that you want to bring into the space initially that focuses all of your power, all of your characteristics to the moment. And then there's a moment in time where the challenge and the skill match, and then you're not even there, right? And so there's layers. And one could argue that both are necessary, maybe. But what encompasses the mastery game is that divine, I think one of them is the surrender to it having to go a certain way. Let me just show up and do what I can do, read the moment and adapt to what's happening as it's happening, as opposed to trying to anticipate and force.
Because I've also let go of the story that if it doesn't go the right way, that's a reflection of me, that I'm bad or I'm not good I'm imperfect or I'm unworthy or whatever, because it's not about us. It's not about you. It's about the bigger macro story that is being told and crafted. And even in this contrast or in this thing that doesn't seem like it's working out is working out. Right. Right. It's part of that. It's such an interesting concept. And I'm really interested to know, was there a defining shift? Was there a moment where you felt like you shifted out of the performance piece into this lifestyle and commitment to a devotional, masterful, life? Because I think there's a moment, or I don't know, maybe it's a season that people kind of traverse through, where you stop having to negotiate and convince yourself to show up and do certain things. It just becomes part of who you are, a lifestyle, right? Like there was so much of my life where it was the push of like, Tori, you need to do your practices today. You need to sit down, you need to meditate, you need to journal, you need to work out, or whatever area of my life I was trying to develop, where I had to implement the habit and get myself to do it, versus there's a shift to now it's like, this is part of who I am. This is, now I've shifted from have to embodied practice. And maybe that happens with all these different little skill sets or different ways of developing. But was there a shift where you felt like something clicked into place, or it was like, I've arrived into a part of myself that feels more sturdy and more whole and more true, that isn't being driven by lack and scarcity and ego? And now
I think I'm the best that I've ever been at it. To say that it was one moment, I can't narrow it down to one, but what I have become aware of is that from an early age, I started really strong habits thanks to my parents. Self-worth habits of knowing who I am, my values, where I come from, work ethic, integrity, and these, with the help of therapy, have compounded into me realizing that I didn't start in my 20s. I started at 10, 11, And then by the time I was 21, 22, I have already had a decade of practice in these strong fundamentals that I'm now beginning to really appreciate and leverage. So I think it's a recognition of what you're going through, which I think a lot of people are not good at. Like, we're just on to the next, that we don't sift through what has already happened to pull out things. One, things that we shouldn't do anymore, but also things that we have done that are really cool. So there's that. There's pivotal moments like marriage and commitments that for me force me to be better and hold really powerful mirrors as to what I thought I was versus how I'm coming across to people that I really care and love, where the gap is. So filling those. And then feedback, verbal and nonverbal, from me continuously showing up to the craft for over a decade. All those combined into my understanding of what the impact is that I'm able to help create in an environment or in someone. When you see that enough times, you're just like, okay, clearly there's something here. Now, am I saying like, oh, I'm the best at this, or like, no, but it's like, I also got to be aware of my power, and with that power, responsibility to not tarnish it, to protect it. Not everyone needs it. Not everyone should have it. And that's what I think creates the precision of words, of spaces, of where you allocate time and attention and love to. So I think all that has helped me particularly further deepen mastery, but that requires a lot of reflection.
Yeah, I think that's an absolute prerequisite for this. Because when you were talking about Kobe and Mamba, like this almost like this archetype or this like other
person.
Yeah, this other person that comes through. And then what you just said around claiming your power. I think that is a big piece for people, because especially if we've been taught to diminish our power or to like don't be cocky, don't be arrogant. And sometimes we get that confused with standing in our wholeness and in our power and our truth. And we dilute it because we're afraid of judgment or, people being triggered by, you and your, standing in your power and the authority that you have over your own life. Because for those out there, like, you will trigger people.
Yeah, you will.
When you start to stand in your light and in your gifts and your abilities, and you don't apologize for them and you don't diminish them, because what it will do, it will reflect as a mirror to people who aren't standing in theirs, right? So there is that piece that I think a lot of us have to reconcile with and acknowledge that there's a falling away of kind of relationships or things that don't serve anymore,
right?
Or it can trigger people. And that Mamba mentality is almost, for me, the way I experience it, is like the king or the queen that's coming online. It's like that archetype of the highest version of you that knows who they are, who loves, like, without condition, is open-hearted, is of service, and is here to just be on a mission to like be themselves.
Yeah.
And to like let go of all the things that tell you that that's not okay. And when we are embodying our truest essence, that supernatural things happen.
Totally.
Literally, like, we're able to create things that to some people says like, how is that possible? The impossible becomes possible. And because there's this almost lack of friction and resistance and anything that's in the way for power to flow through and divinity and love to flow through. And that like king archetype is almost like, or the queen for me is, I ask myself the question in moments where I'm like negotiating with myself. It's like, what would the queen do?
Yes.
What would the king do?
Yes. Powerful. Those are referring to the Jungian archetypes, right? Queen, warrior, lover, magician. And common misconceptions is like thinking that I'm only one, but you have all of them, right? And so the beauty about asking what mindset is going to be optimal for the thing that I'm about to go into activates versions of you, realities of you that give you access to things you wouldn't normally see if you didn't do the prep before you enter the moment, right? Because like Kobe, Mamba mentality works on the court, but not at home.
So it's the intention of what am I showing up for and what is needed for this assignment.
Which is like the intention and the dosage. If I'm having a conversation with my son and I come at it from a Mamba mentality perspective in a moment where he needs the lover, I missed an opportunity to connect and to drill home what could maybe be a really powerful moment for him, right? Or if I'm in a fight with my wife and it becomes adversarial, like I got to win this and you're wrong, like then that's going to create a different dynamic. So again, it's like thinking through what is going to give me the best opportunity to learn and to create as much impact as possible so that everyone involved can grow, and then work on becoming that, removing everything else. That's like the prerequisite, in my opinion, to one, mastery, but also even flow. Because you're removing what doesn't necessarily need to be there. So more of you is already in the moment. And then if you're growth oriented, you're going to challenge yourself in the moment, or the moment will challenge you. Either way, you'll be forced to kind of rid yourself of maybe the alter ego for a moment to fully surrender to what the moment is. And that's where I think grace comes in. Divine connection comes in. I mean, and that people have felt that, I think, at degrees in their life, but that can be a regular occurrence.
Totally. Yeah. And that speaks to like the lesson and the learning and the integration of that, the visceral feeling of that is embodied practice. That's what embodiment is, right? And I think when I talk about self-mastery, it's embodied. You can't have mastery without the embodiment of it.
Right.
You can't think, it's not just a mindset game.
No.
It's not just a thinking about like the mentality. It's the mentality plus the practice and the experience of it. And that happens in the moment when you're having the conflict with the wife or you're in the conversation with your son. It's not, and yes, there's reflection after, but our relationships for me and our life is the court, is the field that we play on, that we get to practice implementing these things in real time.
Yes.
Right. So I'm curious, like, can you, like, in terms of your relationship, for instance, and you talking about having a masterful marriage, like, can you give me an example of a moment where you've seen, okay, there's two choice points here. I can choose love or I could choose being right. You know what I mean? I could choose to expand into letting go of what's not needed here, which is my, my judgment and this limitation that this box that I'm putting around this conversation. Or I can choose the old way, the default programming, you know what I mean? Like, because it's in that new choice that change happens.
Got two examples. One was within the first 2 weeks of us meeting together that established the relationship that we now have. Coming off of a 6-year relationship where I thought that was it. That ended really bad, detrimental to me. I spent the next 8, 9, 10 months really developing a newer version of me to make space for who would come in. Then Amanda showed up in college. She had everything that I wanted. Like, I literally wrote down all the qualities and she had 90% of them. And I even gave that paper to her to read. She's like, is this me? I'm like, yes, it was before I knew you. But 2 weeks in, I take her to this spot on the mountain and I have an honest, frightening conversation about what I want this relationship to be and to see if she's open to that, because I had experienced pain. I don't want that pain again. So I got to be honest and upfront that if this isn't what you want, like, then we just got to separate and go our separate ways. And I said, I want a relationship that revolves around growth. And if we're not getting better and we can't continuously improve on ourselves and each other, we don't have a shot, you know? So what do you think? And man, that was the longest 17 seconds ever. And she came back and she was like, no, I want that. Cool. That gave us so much freedom to then give each other feedback on when we're not living optimally to each other's standards. So that was point one. The story number two is there was a moment about 4 years into the relationship as the honeymoon phase was wearing off that we were in kind of a, rough patch for lack of a better term. And there were some things that had taken place and it was rocky. And like, this could go a lot of different ways. This could be it, or this can be something that we double down on. And in that moment, it was very easy for me to put blame on what she was doing. And what I, not initially, but within a few hours and a day, came to the realize, okay, what part am I playing in this? And my acknowledgement of how I was not upholding what I said initially I was about gave space for some of the things that she was doing to also not be honored. And so it was what she did in my book was not okay. And what I did to her was not okay. But I had to acknowledge my side in order for her to admit her side, but also for us to even work on it. And so that was really hard to vocalize because, you know, that was a really hard moment in our relationship. And I was hurt and she was hurt. And I'm happy to say we got through that and made us stronger. But there was some vulnerability and some honesty that needed to be had there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that is a beautiful reflection of it at the beginning of the relationship. The container that you created is like, what are we devoted to?
Yeah.
Like that was the devotional path that was laid out right then. It's like, we're going to walk this together.
Yes.
And this is the container that we're building for our relationship to thrive in, because without a container, it's like, what direction are we headed in?
Yeah.
And like, what are our standards and what is important to us? And like, I'm moving in this direction and I think you're moving in that direction too, but I don't know, you know?
Exactly.
And then because of that level of foundation and because of those agreements that you make at the beginning, it gives you something to come back to in moments that are really challenging.
Right.
Like, oh, I agreed to take 100% responsibility of my side of the street, and you agreed to take 100% responsibility for your side of the street. And now, because of that, repair can happen, or like a bridge can be formed, and we can connect again, you know? Yeah.
And if you haven't started a relationship on that, then that's okay. Start now. And that can be something as simple as, here's what I see for our relationship. And I'm curious, like, what you also think, and what do we want this relationship to be about? You know, like earlier you were talking about virtues and like virtues in relationships, like where are we allowing divinity to come into how we operate? And are we matching our actions to what we say is important? And if not, then that's a breach of integrity. And that's going to eat this relationship alive faster than anything that we could say to each other, because we're not going to show up true.
Right.
And if we can't show up true to someone so intimate, where else are we going to do that?
Totally.
You know? And
yeah. And so much what I find is that like a lot of our suffering comes from living outside of integrity with our values and our virtues, right? It's like we create pain for ourselves and our relationships and all these things start to experience rupture and cracks in the foundation when we stop living in alignment with the things that we say are most important to us. And when we start to get like, you know, we start to make excuses and we let things go on long, you know, a little bit longer than, you know, maybe our like cheat days now go on for a lot longer time. You start to see the results of that.
Yep.
And the moment that you can come back to the foundational values or agreements of a relationship or of your life and start to just make choices that are in alignment with that, it's beautiful to see how things start to repair themselves. And for me, it's like the spiritual chiropractor that I go to, and I'm like, oh, things start to feel a little bit more easeful, or I have access to more than I did before.
Yes.
Because pain I start to get contracted and like hurting when I'm not making choices that are, I'm saying yes to things that are no for me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I'm saying no to things that I'm not making space for things that actually really nourish us, or like creating space for us to have deep connection or deep conversation or whatever it is. And so sometimes it's just an acknowledgement of like, I haven't made space for this. And now I want to, and I acknowledge that. And it's my intention going forward to make sure this is a priority for us or for me. And I'm going to go first. I'm going to make sure it's a priority for me. And if you want to join me, great.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just a couple degree shift.
Yeah.
It's not that we've just completely gotten off track, but sometimes we just need to come back to what's most true and most important again.
Yeah. And another way of asking that question is, where am I lying to myself and to others? You know, like we can lie so often that we believe them, you know? And so just asking the question and spending 1 minute thinking about it, like, can be enough that shifts the next behavior, that opens the door to a new conversation, that leads to a different realization, that now leads to a new upgraded version of you and the person that you're communicating with. One thought, you know? And so it doesn't take a lot. You have to have willingness to want to go there.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah. And that's the humility piece of saying, like, there's still more for me to learn, and I don't have it all figured out. And I'm also willing to say, like not that I've own mistakes and own where we've like not shown up, and not hold on to that as like, I'm bad and I'm wrong and I'm not now worthy of this love or this relationship or this good thing. But it's like, it's okay to miss the mark and refine. That's what mastery is. It's the refinement, right? It's like, oh, this level, I didn't completely execute in the way that I most want to. And so how can I learn and refine so that I can make those adjustments?
Yes. Well said.
Right?
Well said. There's a story. Have you heard of the Carpenter story?
Tell me. No.
Okay. So short story. When I went to UNLV and I graduated, I had applied to be the graduation speaker of like
I can see
the class.
This for you. Yeah.
I didn't get it, but this is the story I was going to tell.
Okay, great.
It was about this carpenter who approaches retirement, and he's one of the best, if not the best in the industry. And his boss is like, "Hey, I know you want to go and retire, and I respect that, but just one more house. Like, please, I don't have anyone else. I think you'd be great for it." And reluctantly, the carpenter says, fine. And so, he gets to work. But instead of doing it the way he normally does it, buying the highest quality materials, being detail-oriented, hiring the best guys, he starts cutting corners because he's like, dude, I'm doing this to you as a favor. Like, I just want to go. And so, he cuts corners, and ultimately he finishes the house. And it's not built to his standard, but it's okay. Gives the keys over to the boss, and the boss goes, well, I loved working with you so much that this is your house. Like, I wanted to gift that to you, to thank you for all the years that you've showed up for me. And in the contractor was like, oh, the carpenter, and it's like, what that reminds me of is like, what mastery is it's doing your best when no one's there, when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when it's just you and whatever it is, like still doing it with integrity, because Steve Jobs built the internal deck of the computer beautifully, even though no one would ever see it. And his team's like, no one's ever going to look, Steve. Like, why are we spending time on this? He's because you'll know, I'll know. And that's what matters. That attention to detail may sound crazy, but it's like, when you have that level of standard for what you devote yourself to, then everybody around you recognizes that, and you automatically invite that for them too.
It brings to mind the quality and the virtue of excellence, of just living with this devotion to excellence. Yeah. And the other thing that it brings to mind is, when you do something, it's like almost like the golden rule: do unto others the way you would want to be treated. Like treat this as if you were doing it for God, like, because you are. Like, there's because God is in you, and 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 so it's like I'm creating this for the greatest person to ever witness it, versus like I want myself to have the best.
Yeah.
I want you to have the best quality. And there was something recently when I was in Austin, I went to this really amazing event, and they told this story about, I can't remember the full background of it, but basically it's this idea in the Tantra community, the way that they talk about God is essentially like create something so beautiful that God recognizes himself in it, right? That God can say, oh, I can see the beauty in that. And so I see myself in it. And to live your life and to build a life that is so beautiful and so to a standard of excellence in beauty and through devotion, that you see the God in it, you see the divinity in it. And when you take that frame and then you project that onto the whole world and you're like, I see the beauty in you and I see the God in you and I see the divinity in you. I want to also show up to this moment to honor that in you. And so when you do that, you build the house differently. You don't cut the corners because whether you're doing it for you or you're doing it for someone else, you're doing it in devotion to the God in all of us, you know, and that perspective is only available to the open-hearted because the ego is what creates that separation of we're not the same. You're over there and I'm over here, and it's about who can have more, like, I'm going to do good for me, but you know, I'm going to cut corners with you, versus we're all part of this one beautiful intelligence, and what I do to you, I do to myself. Right. When I treat you
love that.
with disrespect, I'm actually disrespecting myself. When I don't honor you, I'm dishonoring myself. And it's like seeing that mirror of like what I do, how I treat the planet, how I care for, you know, my little patch of grass is a reflection of how I treat the whole, you know, and take that as far as you want it, but I think there's something in that for people.
The line of, so that God recognizes himself or herself or itself in you, that hit. And what I think about is not that recognition moment means that it's better than anyone else's. It just means it's the truest form of what it could be in that moment, which means it was the best that you could do, right? And so just drilling home that, again, comes back to how can I show up fully? And in the fullness, magic will unfold at some level. And then when we can live like that, the way that you're describing, I think heaven becomes here. It's not something we go to. It's something we grow to, something that is present here. It's a reality. It's a filter. It's a way of looking at it. And then maybe, you know, hell becomes something where it's disconnected and you're not there. And that therefore no one can really experience all of what you can deliver in that moment, you know?
Yeah. Course in Miracles or a Return to Love says, you know, love in your mind produces love in your life. This is the meaning of heaven. Fear in your mind produces fear in your life. This is the meaning of hell. And so it talks about it as being a state of mind, you know, and the quality and the texture of a state of mind. And to talk about, just to bring it full circle, this infinite game of mastery is love is ever expanding, and it is the truest true. And so you can go as deep into love as you choose to venture into, and you will never run out, right? And so the game will forever be playing of how deep can I expand into love and make love my mission? How much more can I open my heart? How wide open can I stay even in the moments I want to contract and close and disconnect? And in what you were saying is like, how can I show up fully? I think the other side of that coin and the question is, what's preventing me from showing up fully?
Yeah.
And therein that lies my work of where I get to to work on releasing the things that keep me from being fully myself. Or
so Michelangelo, right? Like I'm removing all the barriers that's restricting the angel from being seen in the marble, right? And like I think of mastery also more as a subtraction thing than an addition thing. It's not about adding more. It's about doing more with less. And that requires no to that so that this can be the focus. And yeah, mastery is just one of those things I'm just fascinated by. And do my best to live in as often as I can.
Mm-hmm. Any nods you want to give to any masters in your life, teachers that you've learned from?
Yeah, that's cool.
Any, final codes that you've said you feel like you found from sitting or learning from any specific masters and teachers in your life?
Start with the immediate, my parents, obviously, just providing the space for me to grow and to learn and to be me and feel loved. I think that's huge. Shout out to Dr. G, big component of why I'm here and in this field. Master teachers of my wife, my kids, like those are the strongest mirrors I have. To my friends, B, Chelsea, Ange, like these individuals who have seen me through all stages and weren't even at my wedding in 2016, which is wild. Some of the oldest friendships, Seth, Johnny, for being pillars and consistencies in my life, and for the people who have been, very brief but powerful in my life, whether it's through heartbreak or through just that one line, that one quote that they shared when I was receptive to it, and just thank you. Those are the moments also that are really, really important. So I think all of that has created what I now am, and so I am because we are. I think it's important to realize that your community does shape you in a lot of ways, and you could also help shape your community. So make sure you choose the right one and build the right one.
Yeah.
And then, I think a quote that is relatable to this, and when you can operate like that, there's a calmness that comes in. But the quote is, "Great leaders make calm contagious." And I don't think you can be calm if you're not clear. And the work that we're talking about is really just getting clear. And the greatest leaders that I've studied are the clearest thinkers that are able to zero in on one of billions of things and only drill into that. And that's mastery.
Yeah.
So
I love it. I mean, I feel, I feel more inspired now, and I know those listening do too, to not be afraid to choose something and to really devote your life to it, and that doesn't mean you can't change your mind,
right?
Or new things won't appear. But I think a lot of times we are afraid of losing our freedom by committing to a life or business or a relationship. And that keeps people from getting that precise and getting that clear, because there's this belief that you're going to lose something in the process. But I think what you've shared is how much you gain by being really, really intentional about what you choose and what you devote yourself to. And in that, there's so much to be you give, but there's so much more to be received, Yeah. And I think people are looking for that. And you've given a beautiful kind of explanation and framework for how to play a different game. Yeah.
Well, and I'll add this too, mastery doesn't always have to be a profession. It could be a skill. If the goal is to be a better communicator, then one thing I might want to master is asking questions. And every day I just get better at asking questions or listening. I want to be a better listener, and that's listening to me, listening to others, listening to the environment, listening to the birds, right? Whatever. So it's not I feel like I'm being called to be a video producer or a singer, and right now I'm in finance. It can be that, but it could also start with something as simple as a skill. So thinking about it like that. And then one additional story I'll add before passing it back is the, what's his name? The coach for the Packers in the 50s.
I'm not the person.
Vince Lombardi. Vince Lombardi. Took over a team, the Green Bay Packers, that was not winning. I think they won 2 games. And then within a season or two, they were in the national championship and since have won 5 Super Bowls under his leadership, which I think he was there for 8 to 12 years, somewhere in there. But he ran basically one play. It was called the power sweep. And he's we're going to run this play to perfection so that no matter if the team we're facing knows we're going to run it, they're not going to be able to stop it because we're going to run it so perfectly. And they did. And the defense could not stop a beautiful, perfect orchestration where everyone knew their job, everyone knew their role, and executed it fully, powerfully, and with precision. That's like, that could be.
You can see it coming and still.
Yeah, you just, it's a force.
Yeah.
And so, take that with the skill or the profession and integrate that in whatever way it makes sense. But that I usually like anchoring it to a story. And that's a really powerful example for me.
Because show me one person that you admire, respect, or look up to that isn't masterful in something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The reason you admire them is because of the level of mastery that they have achieved in whatever craft that it is, and that's why we have the idols that we have.
Exactly.
Right. But then to shift that and to say, how can I begin my own journey with mastery is where so many things start getting unlocked versus just idolizing and admiring people for theirs. Starting to step on your own path is where it really gets fun. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
space.
codes and just the walk that you walk and being an example for so many and a reference point for what's possible when you live a life of devotion. So I see you, honor you.
Thank you.
And you're welcome back anytime.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, you guys, for being here. It's always a joy and a pleasure to share with you. And it's my request that if this touches you, that you'll share it with someone that you know and that you love, and pass on that baton. You never know what it will inspire in others and what it will ignite. And you can be that fire starter for somebody else and fan their flame. So if this resonated with you, make sure to connect with James online. Where can people find you and what you're up to?
Easiest is Instagram. My email is there. Podcast is there. Website's there. It's kind of my most central. And then, I got a few cool resources and experiences coming up. So if those feel aligned, would love to collab and see you there.
Put you on the show notes if you want to go find James's website, his Instagram, and anything that he's currently building. We'll link it in the show notes. And maybe leave a rating and review if you feel inspired. But other than that, we love you. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week on the Coachable Podcast. See ya.